This is part number 1 of my Big 12 football preview for 2011. We're going to be talking about Missouri on this particular show. You have to really give it up to Gary Pinkel. After all, before he got there, 10-win seasons at Missouri were considered a rarity. But Pinkel, give him a lot of credit. He's made a habit out of double-digit winning years, including last year when they went 10-3 and won a share of the Big 12 North Championship, lost out in the tiebreak though to Nebraska. And despite the fact that the season ended in disappointing fashion with the loss to Iowa in that bowl game, still though Missouri accomplished a lot in 2010, and this year they have a lot of talent coming back, 9 offensive and 7 defensive starters. Let's go ahead and talk about the offense a little bit and the receiving corps. This is going to be, by the way, a great year for receivers in the Big 12 with the units that OU, OSU, and A&M have coming back. Well, I'm telling you what, right now, go ahead and put Missouri on that list too. In fact, I think they've got the most experienced bunch of receivers. Everybody's back, including T.J. Moe, who last season led the Tigers in receptions with 92. And you also have back Jarrell Jackson, who led the team in yards per reception with 13 yards per catch. And Wes Kemp, who that thought was the #1 guy last season, entering 2010, still had a modest year, had about 50 catches. So you have the receivers back. And you also have back maybe the best tight end in all of college football in Michael Egnew. Almost any publication you look at, Egnew is going to be either a first or a second team All-American tight end. Now, key number 1 to this team, it's going to be James Franklin. Whether he likes it or not, all eyes are going to be on him. He replaces Blaine Gabbert, left early for the NFL. Now, Franklin, terrific athlete, can throw the ball. Question is, how accurate is he going to be, and how quickly can he get rid of the football? That's something that, you know, as far as that quick release, that's something that Blaine Gabbert had, okay? And that's something that you really just can't teach, okay? You can try to get rid of the ball quickly, but sometimes that could be ugly results. But Gabbert did a fairly good job as far as just getting rid of that ball in a hurry and finding his receivers. We'll see if the new quarterback, Franklin, can do that. And the good news for him, he's got the receivers to do it, including the tight end Egnew. What we don't know is the chemistry, how that's going to work, okay? And I'm sure the chemistry between Gabbert and those guys were pretty good. So now Franklin, and by the way, too, let's not forget about the backfield because he can use those running backs, too, as receivers, which Missouri has done so often in the past. Devian Moore, as well as Henry Josie, as well as Kendall Lawrence, 3 guys who saw some quality PT in 2010. All 3 are back. The offensive line, this is a big reason why I think a lot of Missouri fans are optimistic about this season. It's a veteran group. 4 starters return. The only guy you have to replace, fortunately, he was the best of the bunch in Tim Barnes at center. But the 2 guards are back in Austin Weebles as well as Jason Palmgren. And then the tackles. Elvis Fisher, multiple starts in his terrific career at left tackle, and Dan Hoke is at the other tackle. So not going to be a problem as far as protecting the QB. We'll see, though, how Missouri does as far as rush offense. Now, looking at the defensive side, this is going to be key number 2, the defensive line, the interior. They lose a dandy in Alden Smith, who left early for the NFL. So now it becomes Brad Madison's defensive interior. He's now the leader of the team. We know this because last season he led Missouri in sacks, had 7. In fact, Missouri, as a team last year, was 9th in the country in sacks. They had 38 of them. But let's not forget about the other quality defensive end, that's Jaquez Smith. And if added to the rotation, if he's eligible, Sheldon Richardson is going to get his name called too. So defensive ends, Missouri is loaded. Missouri does a good job of getting to the quarterback, as we mentioned. Question is, can they stop anybody on the ground? Nebraska big time exposed them last season in that game in Lincoln. It was not a terrific year at all for Missouri as far as being able to contain the run. Dominic Hamilton should help if he stays healthy. Had some ankle issues in 2010, so they're hopeful that that issue is resolved and that the ankle will hold up just fine. Linebacking core, this is where the leading tackler of the Tigers comes from. Xavier, Gooden. Key number 3, I think, for the Tigers is going to be the play of the secondary. And this would be probably your biggest concern other than quarterback if you're a Tigers fan. Because you have only one true starter back, and that is Kenja Jackson. Jackson is going to need to have a terrific season for the Tigers because he's the veteran of the group. A guy that was the #1 reserve a year ago, that's the corner, Kip Edwards, now full-time starter. And then you're going to have another new corner, and then the free safety position is going to be inexperienced. As long as Missouri continues to do what they've done in recent years and get to the quarterback, that'll obviously make life easier for the inexperienced secondary. Otherwise, it could be a very long year. And remember, the Big 12 is a pass-happy league. So the secondary, regardless, is going to be heavily tested. And this area, like I said, is not quite as experienced as linebacker and as far as that defensive line goes. So all eyes on defense, I think, is going to be on the secondary. Special teams, though, no problem. Grant Russell, one of the best kickers in the country. Out of 132 kicks in his career, you know how many he's missed out of 132? Only 5. That's right, he's 127, 132, and he has range as well. So the special teams, as far as place kicking, that problem is solved. Now, let's talk a little bit about the schedule for the Tigers. September could be rocky. Your season opener, it's not a layup. You're playing the defending Mid-American Conference champions in Miami of Ohio. That won't be easy. And then, get this, 6 days later on a Friday night, national television, you're playing in the desert in Tempe against Arizona State, an up-and-coming Pac-12 team. That will be very difficult. And then your Big 12 opener couldn't start any harder. You're opening up against a team that hasn't lost a home game in 6 years in Oklahoma, even though I know the Tigers beat OU last year in Columbia. Obviously a much tougher chore trying to win away from home this time against one of the better teams in the country. So we'll see how that works out, and I'll talk a little bit more about that game in a second. Some of the more attractive home games from Mizzou will include Texas, Texas Tech, as well as Oklahoma State. You have to, however, go to College Station at Texas A&M, but you did win in Aggie Land last year. You played them during the first half of the season. A&M caught fire during the second half of the season, so it probably won't be the same A&M team that you saw a year ago when Missouri absolutely dominated them. That will be one of the more appealing games this year in the Big 12. Realistic goal for Missouri, I think 10-3. I think that's my prediction for them. I think 10-3 if you count the bowl game, 9-4 if you don't. But I think they win at least 9 regular season games. That's what I'm going to stick to. Realistic goal for them, I think, is to have at least a double-digit winning season. Of the 7 games I mentioned, Miami of Ohio, Texas, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Arizona State, Missouri needs to win at least 4 of them and the bowl game to get to that 10-win plateau. Remember, they won 10 last year. With talent coming back, they're capable of doing it again, but because they're inexperienced in the secondary and because they don't have Alden Smith there anymore, and also because of the fact that it's a new quarterback, I don't think this team is going to have enough to win the Big 12, but I do think that they'll finish in the upper half. In fact, I've got Missouri picked to finish 4th in the league with a 9-3 regular season prediction. A game to talk about, I think it's going to be the one in Norman against the Sooners on September 24th. Remember, they beat the Sooners last year when OU was #1 in the BCS, and Missouri, it was the biggest home game in the history of that program, and they played like it because they had a spectacular night in upsetting the Sooners. OU hasn't forgotten about that, and Missouri might be catching OU at a good time. Remember, the Sooners the week before played Florida State in that huge road game, so OU could come in with either an emotional letdown after a win or a hangover if the Sooners were upset by the Seminoles. So you're catching Oklahoma at a good time, but remember, nobody's won in Norman since TCU beat them back in September of '05. So beating Oklahoma in Norman, a lot easier said than done. That will do it for my preview of Missouri. Part number 2 of my preview coming soon on the same webpage. We're going to head to the South Plains of Texas and talk about the Texas Tech Red Raiders. That's it for now.